I went into a physics degree thinking I was going to become an academic, and I quite quickly realized that I did not enjoy physics. I talked about how humans were the most interesting thing on the planet, and I still believe that today, and that's still kind of the guiding philosophy of my research and my career. I love problem solving and just kind of figuring things out on the fly and making stuff up as you go along, which is how a boutique agency is different to a bigger agency.
Welcome to the Early Insights podcast, an opportunity to understand exactly what it takes to build a career in the data, research, and insights sector, and the many different ways to do so. I'm your host, Lewis Reeves, founder and CEO at Walr. And today we have an extremely interesting guest. From a prestigious physics degree to a research career covering all corners of the globe and now starting her own agency, I'm extremely excited to welcome Clare Archer. Welcome, Clare.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you for having me.
Look, Clare, super excited to have you on the podcast today. I think it would be great for people to understand a way that market research can take them around the world like it has done for you. But before we get into your market research career, I'm keen to wind the clock back just a slight bit further. And as I mentioned in that introduction, learn a bit more about your degree and particularly thinking that phase of consideration as you're coming out of college and thinking about that degree. What was going through your mind? Why physics? And tell us a little bit about where you studied and so on.
So I did a physics degree at Warwick in the UK, which is where I'm originally from. So born and educated in the UK. So I was a really academic kid. I was very lucky. School came easily to me. I did well in exams. I did well in pretty much everything except maybe sort of sport and art and that kind of stuff. So I kind of had my pick of directions, and I think I chose physics because it was hard. But when you are an academic kid like I was, you get, there's a lot of expectation on you, and you start to wrap that up as part of your identity, and put that kind of pressure on yourself. So I did love it. I loved physics. I thought it was so interesting to understand the universe and something bigger than us as humans. But ultimately, I think I did it because I had something to prove. Not sure what, not sure to whom. But yeah, I think that's why I chose physics.
It sounds like, as we'll learn later on today, that tackling big challenges is something you enjoy doing. So that makes a lot of sense. And I guess the audience will be intrigued. One goes and gets their physics degree with great academic skill. How does a physics degree end up in a career in market research? And was market research the first career that you picked?
It certainly wasn't what I thought I was going to do. So I went into a physics degree thinking I was going to become an academic and do something terribly big and important in the world of science. And I quite quickly realized that I did not enjoy physics nearly as much as I thought I did. It was a very, very tough degree. And I sort of, within the first year, realized probably not what I wanted to do with my life, but I started, so I was sure as hell going to finish it. So I guess after university, I was in a bit of a wilderness. So I went trotting off to the Republic of Ireland. I had a friend over there. She said, come here. So I took sort of a working gap year and doing some different temping roles. So I tried to figure out what on earth to do with this degree. And when I sort of decided, okay, it's time to get a proper grown-up job, the only thing I could think to do was just apply to a bunch of different grad programs and see what stuck. And that was a pretty useful exercise as it turned out. So I Googled things with analyst in the title. So anything with analyst in the title, I just applied to. And there were a few I didn't get, but I was lucky enough to end up with 3 different offers, wildly different offers on the table at the same time. So I had an offer to go work on the UK's nuclear submarine program. I think kind of like maintaining the subs, not going under the water, but looking after them. An offer to be an intelligence analyst with the Ministry of Defence, or an offer to be an analyst at a consultancy that is now Kantar Futures. It was called Henley Centre, had Light Vision back then. And I think what was so useful about the process is that when you go to a job interview, you have to talk someone into sort of why you want this job and why you're the right fit for this job. And kind of going through that process, I think I actually talked myself into, well, spoiler alert, the Kantar job. And I talked about how humans were the most interesting thing on the planet, and I still believe that today, and that's still kind of the guiding philosophy of my research and my career and what I hope to build my business around. So yeah, like most researchers, it was kind of an accident.
So fascinating. You could have been protecting our country and supporting our submarines, but you chose people. And
Yeah.
it sounds like a few years later, it's still fulfilling and very fascinating for you.
It is. I love it. I feel so lucky to do what I do. No 2 days are ever the same. As you said, it's taken me around the world. It's endlessly fascinating. Humans will always surprise you. So yeah, it
Brilliant.
was the right choice.
And Claire, tell us a little bit about that business you joined, the size of it, the exposure you got, and how long you spent there prior to looking for climates a little warmer.
But back then, Cantar Futures were probably around 50-ish people, something like that, maybe a little more. It was kind of right in the center of London, so it felt very like cool and grown up and trendy. And it was a really kind of buzzy, cool environment to work in. I'm sure it still is. And I was there for the better part of 2 years. And I didn't appreciate at the time what a fantastic place that was to start out, what like great grounding it gave me in so many different aspects of research. But yeah, the London thing, as cool as it was, kind of wasn't my jam. And I think I'd always known since I was a teenager that I would leave the UK. I always had wanted to live abroad, and I sort of had visions of living in like loads of different countries. I've gone some way to achieving that, but I think I'm done now.
And so that period, you're getting your grounding in market research, but there's this pull to move abroad. Talk to me about how you came across and fell upon Australia, and then maybe talk to the audience about the process in which you went through to finding a job. Did you move down there without a job? Did you plan that before? How did that all work out?
Australia was kind of I moved with a then partner who also was desperate to get out of the UK. And I guess we sort of were narrowing down based on criteria. We didn't have the luxury of not working, so there had to be employment opportunities. And therefore, for me at least, it had to be an English speaking country because none of my languages are anywhere near good enough to be able to work in them. And it had to be warm and sunny. I had to have good weather. So those were the criteria. And I guess we were tossing up between Sydney and Singapore. Singapore's pretty like rainy. So I think Sydney won on that basis. Although when I moved here, I then discovered that it actually rains quite a lot in Sydney too, but that's okay. So the process, I mean, I was very lucky. It was just before what we call the GFC, the global financial crisis, which I thought the whole world called it, but apparently not. So the big crash of sort of late 2008. We were looking at sort of just the end of 2007, so it was still kind of boom time. It was very easy to get a job. I think just because there was more demand than there was supply. So I applied to an international recruiter who I guess must have had offices in sort of both the UK and Australia and probably other places too. Um, and started setting up interviews and quite quickly got offered a job with a super cool boutique agency called Stankham Research and Planning. This was sort of while I was still in London, so it made that a whole lot less stressful. My partner went without a job and found one quite quickly
Yeah.
when we got there, I think, if I'm recalling it correctly. So it absolutely can be done. I was young enough to get a working holiday visa, which is something a lot of countries do, which gave you the right to work for sort of 6 months for any one employer, and then you'd have to transition to some other kind of visa. So you're very, very lucky timing wise, very lucky to kind of find a great role with a great agency.
And that seems, my experience of the Australian market research industry, that's a reasonably well-trodden path that a lot of Brits end up making their way down to Australia, and so agencies are generally quite open to hearing from Brits that want to make that journey and
Yeah.
take them under their wing and bring them on.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of Brits in market research over here. And I think sort of back then there was always this perception that the agencies in the UK are really good and British researchers are really well trained. Not that Aussies aren't, but sort of that back then was the perception. So yeah, it's a very easy pathway, or at
And
least it was.
moving gears slightly, Claire, the experience working for a boutique agency rather than the mid-size agency that you left behind in London, I'm guessing that was a bit more hands-on.
It certainly was, in a good way, like, it really suited me. I love problem solving and just kind of figuring things out on the fly and making stuff up as you go along, which is how a boutique agency is different to a bigger agency. And, there's a place for both, and different people will fit better, in different environments. But sort of that bigger agency probably has a little bit more in the way of established processes and silos. So perhaps there's a whole team that takes care of certain aspects like programming or fielding or data processing for you. Whereas in a boutique agency, you are it. You are pretty much doing everything. And you thrive there if you're sort of willing to be hands on and can think on your feet. Whereas in a bigger agency, you perhaps need a little bit more in the way of skill in terms of kind of navigating the politics and understanding sort of the unspoken rules and all the things that are going on beneath the surface that no one will tell you about.
Absolutely. And so you work with the British agency for a number of years, and then the pull of California becomes strong. And you head over to the US to go on a really exciting growth journey with MarketCast. Tell us a little bit about that. You're settled, you're in the sunshine. I guess the weather in California and Sydney is pretty similar, so tick that box.
There was actually another agency in between. So from staying in sort of the boutique agency, I moved to another pretty small agency called House of Brand. They tended to do slightly different set of work, and part of what they did was, and probably still is, entertainment research, which I'd never even sort of heard of, didn't even know that was a thing. And so it's a predominantly Aussie clients, local filmmakers, local TV production, that kind of thing. And I really loved that side of things. And I don't think I ever intended to live in California. I mean, I never intended to live in Australia, but so there you go, there's a pattern there. And I'd met my parents over there one year, just because it's sort of in the middle, the UK, and just kind of loved it, just fell in love with it, and sort of went, oh, I can live here, I could live here. And obviously that had planted some kind of seed. And then I woke up and sort of literally sat up in bed one day and went, I'm moving to California. And thought, oh, that's a surprise. So it took me about a year. But yes, I made that happen. Kind of, I had that entertainment experience to leverage. And so, yes, I landed with a company called MarketCast in California, which had sort of specialized and focused on entertainment research. So, yeah, gut decision.
Fantastic. And that ended up taking you on an incredible growth journey. I believe they were more mid-sized when you started and pretty large by the time you finished off, and you really went through the ranks there and ended up as SVP, I believe.
Yes, they grew a lot while I was there, so the organisation shifted quite quickly. We've had to keep up with it, and yeah, I was lucky enough to work with some amazing people, some amazing clients. Ran a team over there. Got to SVP, as you say, and then I decided I was coming home.
Yeah. And just to touch on that a bit, Claire, obviously growth is always perceived to be exciting within businesses. That's what we all show up to do. But talk to me about some of the challenges, but also the opportunities that growth came from. And I believe that it was sort of circa 75 people when you started and scaled up to about 500 over a period of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yes, it grew Largely through acquisitions. So there were already a number of companies in the group operating under their own brands, and they kind of got merged together under the MarketCast brand. And then I think there were a couple more acquisitions during my time there. So of course, when you sort of have massive change in that short period of time, suddenly you're working with different people. Suddenly the structure of all the teams change. There's, suddenly instead of one level between you and the CEO, there are now three. And it was a very exciting company to be part of, because they tended to buy in companies that sort of brought some really cool new capability or feature. So you go, oh, all right, well, what's this? What can I now sort of start to blend into my studies? What can I learn? What have you all been doing all this time that I don't know about? So it was exciting from that point of view, and yeah, keeping up with the change was a challenge in itself.
And you mentioned earlier building teams that you managed, and clearly that growth was an important element for the business to be scaling, so that you need more people, and that gives you the ability to flex that management muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. It was challenging to build a team from scratch, but it was great to do that as well, and really kind of handpick people and put different skill sets and personalities together that I thought would sort of complement each other, and make up for all the things I wasn't very good at doing. So yeah, I had a wonderful time doing that. Absolutely, sort of loved, really loved that part of my career.
Amazing. And so again, Claire, there seems to be a theme here of wanting to tackle big challenges ahead of you. You're SVP at a 500 person, rapidly growing American business. And then you take the decision to start your own agency. That must have been quite a big decision for you. What was going through your mind? What were the fears, the excitement? Talk to us, take us to that place.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step in that decision making was I decided that America just wasn't for me long term. And I loved it. I still love it. I have amazing friends there, but it wasn't home. And Australia has been home for me for a very long time. I missed the lifestyle, and I'd sort of decided that I'd come to a point in my life where it was time to put down permanent roots and sort of stop all this flitting about the globe. So I think the first step in the decision making for me was that I did want to go home to Australia. MarketCast were amazing. They said, please stay on, work from Australia, which I did for a couple of years. And it presented me with an opportunity. So the decision was, do I get a different job in a different agency, or do I kind of take the plunge and start something that's mine and that is what I want to do? Because I think I'd had this taste of sort of the Hollywood clients, and kind of getting to pick and choose what I worked on. I thought, no, now is, if ever there's going to be a time, now's the time. And I think I was finally at the point where I believed in myself enough that I could do it. And that took a long time to get to. And that I had sort of the right experience under my belt, that I knew how to do just about every part of research, and the bits I didn't know, I knew who to call. So yeah, I think that the stars finally aligned, and I decided it was time to take the plunge. Otherwise, I'd always wonder if I could have done it.
Absolutely. Well, big congratulations for taking the plunge. And Claire, you mentioned there that you thought just about that you knew enough from a research perspective. As I'm sure you've learned, running a business requires a bit more than just knowledge of your subject area. What are some of the things that come up that have caught you off guard that you weren't expecting to have to tackle?
Oh, so many things. I think the first thing that I wasn't really expecting was the emotional roller coaster of it all. It's almost like I've likened it to being a toddler. Suddenly you're learning to walk again. And suddenly even an email from a client or a prospective client is the most exciting thing that's happened to you all day. So it was really kind of starting all over. and kind of for me learning to deal with the uncertainty, because I'm not someone that enjoys being out of control. um, and I don't really enjoy uncertainty, so just having to get comfortable with, I don't know what's around the corner. I don't know if I'm going to make money this month, but I'm just going to trust and believe in myself that it will be okay. So I think that part of it was huge. In practical things like how to use accounting software and how to even go about setting up a business and what do you need and who are your people that support you now. That's been huge. I think dealing with working on my own, like alone has been part of it because I'm not someone that really enjoys that. I love the collaboration. I love bouncing off other people. And so finding people I can kind of work with and connect with, and just kind of mull stuff over with has been really important for me.
I believe Archer Research and Consulting has just celebrated its first anniversary. And I think I know the answer to this question, but a year in, do you feel you made the right decision?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm, been absolutely blown away with kind of the support I've received over the first year. Been working with some amazing clients, some amazing partners, and just I'm absolutely loving it. As the difficult bits aside, or even because of the difficult bits, because I think nothing worth doing is easy, right? Um, so yeah, I'm sold.
And what is next in store for Archer? Where do you plan to take the business going forward?
I intend to grow it. Um, and like you said, growth is exciting and it's what we all strive for. But I think if there's something I've learned, it's that forget everybody else's expectations, do what you want to do, and it's my business. I don't have to make it massive if I don't want to. All it has to do is pay the mortgage and make me happy. And I think if it gets to the point where it's too big and too stressful, and then that it's lost sight of the original intention. The intention is for me to love what I do. So I'd love to have a group of, a small-ish group of really smart, thoughtful, passionate researchers that I can work with, and it's kind of clients like the awesome ones I have now, that are doing kind of interesting things that are open to kind of innovative new ways to do research, and then see where that goes. I've kind of never been one to make too many grand plans, because you never know what's around the corner, and sometimes if you focus too much on some big lofty goal that's over here, you fail to see the really interesting thing that's on the periphery over here. So yeah, that's the vision at the moment.
So watch this space, a nimble agency that is going to work for great clients and have happy staff and a happy owner. So an exciting time ahead. So Claire, to finish us off, would love to do some quick fire questions with you. The first piece is to get your advice to someone starting their career in market research. What key bit of advice would you give someone that's starting their career today?
Sort of top of mind, I'd say take responsibility for your own training and development. It's a really big transition out of sort of school or university or college into the world of work. And what I see sort of people bump up against a little bit is that it's no one's full-time job to manage your training and development anymore. And there's so much you can do. It's so easy these days to kind of learn anything you want to know about. Ask questions, ask people to show you things, read reports your company's done, but you take control. Don't sit and wait for your manager to do it, because your manager will not have the time, I guarantee you. So that would be my top tip for young researchers starting out today.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. No one cares about your career more than you do, right? And got to take control of it. And Claire, a fascinating journey that you've been on, truly, and probably touched more parts of market research than most. But interestingly, would you have done anything differently if you had the chance to do it again?
I think I'd have made all the same career moves. I think I've been incredibly lucky. What I think I would have done differently, and perhaps what I wish I knew going into the world of work, is that the sort of the hard skills are great, but the soft skills and the way you kind of work in teams and relate to people and manage those politics, that's really important too. And I somehow got through my entire education thinking that just being smart was enough. And it was quite a shock when I found out it wasn't. So when I was a baby researcher, I was a pain in the ass. Well, my poor managers. So yeah, I think I would have had an easier time in some instances if I had worked on those skills sooner. I got there in the end, but yeah, there were some parts that were harder than they needed to be.
And last but not least, one tip that you would give to anyone that you perhaps live by or define your career by?
I think my favorite is the piece of advice my parents have always given me and still give me. And the way they sum it up is drink it while it's busy. What that means to me is appreciate what you've got right now. Because as a society, we are so focused on chasing the next and the next goal and the future and building this and going after that, that I think a lot of us forget to stop and enjoy what we have. And that speaks to me as well about kind of balancing work and career with all the other things in life that make you happy, because you never know what's around the corner, and life will absolutely throw you curveballs when you least expect it. So really just kind of getting that enjoyment out of every minute that you can. Otherwise, what's the point?
Claire, fascinating conversation. I think it's been intriguing to learn about truly living in the moment, striving for happiness, and allowing that to take you on incredible journeys, tackling big challenges, and now at the early phase of a really exciting new journey for you. So it'll be intriguing to see how that plays out, and can't wait to see the successes it brings. Appreciate you joining the Early Insights podcast and look forward to speaking again soon.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been really interesting to reflect back on it. Really enjoyed it.